All right, hello everybody. It's 1:05. We're going to get started for today. Thank you all for attending our Inclusive Leadership Workshop today. My name is Alexandra Briggs. I am the Student Organization Specialist for Student Life, so I oversee all of the clubs and organizations, and I help with our events. And you've probably gotten a lot of emails from me as well. I send out student emails. I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, Kristen Johnson. She's the Director of Student Diversity and Equity at our campus. So she works in the Intercultural Center. So I'm sure you've seen her as well on campus, but let's give her a warm welcome, and she's going to start our presentation today.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I'm really sad that I can't see everyone, but I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you in the future at some point. So Alex, again, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you all more about inclusive leadership and what that looks like. So although we can't see each other, well, I can't see you, I do want you all to be interactive and engaged in the conversation. So if you'll use the chat feature, Alex is going to monitor it and she'll interrupt me because I can't see it since I'm sharing my PowerPoint. But if you all have questions along the way, I also have some questions for you, and so I want to hear from you all. So please give me feedback as we go along. So let's go ahead and get started. I think it's really important for us to define some stuff. Can you all hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, that was weird. It may have been when we started recording, I'm not sure. So anyway, I want to talk to you all about diversity before we get into inclusion, because I think the two sometimes, although they go together, we kind of confuse them. And so I want to define diversity. So when you talk about diversity, we are talking about ways to describe identity. So it could be race, it could be ethnicity, it could be sexual orientation, it could be religion, age, socioeconomic status. And it's not limited to just those identities. Those are just a few that you can consider when we think of diversity. But so when we talk about diversity, we talk about diversity of thought, right? So I always say, like, how boring of a world would it be if we all thought the same? And so one of the great things that makes us unique is that we think differently. We all have had different experiences, and those experiences shape our perspectives. No two people have had the exact same experiences throughout life. And so I think that will give you some context as we move into inclusion and what an inclusive leader is. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is the policy or practice of a group or organization that welcomes, accepts, and treats everyone equally. All individuals are valued and they have equity. So to give an example of diversity, diversity would be everyone having a seat at the table, right? So people of all different backgrounds, identities, some of the ones that we just mentioned. That would be diversity. Inclusion would be ensuring that the people who are sitting at that table are heard, they're valued, and their opinion matters, and allowing those opinions to be put into action. So why would inclusive leadership be important for clubs and organizations? So this is what I'm looking for in the chat. So if you all have some answers to this, that would be great. I would love to hear why you think inclusive leadership would be important for a club or organization.
Everybody enter in your answers in the chat box as well. And no answers are wrong answers, guys.
Right. Don't be shy.
George says more ideas can be explored.
Awesome. Yes, that's a great answer.
Anybody else have some answers as well?
Okay, well, let's go with the idea that more things can be explored. That's absolutely true. The other thing with inclusive leadership in clubs and organizations is that, especially being at college, right, you have so many of your peers who are from different backgrounds. And so a lot of times when we go to college, we're meeting people who don't look like us. We've never interacted with them before. And so it's kind of a new experience. And so as clubs and organizations, those are social settings that bring people together from all different backgrounds. But sometimes if we're not careful, or if we're kind of set in our ways, or we're not willing to explore new ideas or learn of other cultures, it can seem like clubs and organizations are kind of limited to a certain population. And so,
Asma also put to learn about other cultures and different students with new experiences.
Absolutely. That's also a great answer. And you're right on point, both George and Asma. So thank you all for those answers. So when you think of, what inclusion would mean for a club and organization, we think about the leaders of those organizations. And just in general, what are some good traits of a leader, period, regardless if the leader is an inclusive leader or not? Like, what are some of the things that you all think make someone a good leader? And you all can put those in there too.
I'll add one while we wait. So when I think of an inclusive leader, I think of someone who listens to others' opinions and doesn't just act on their own.
Absolutely. That's a great one, Alex.
Does anybody else have any in the chat? Openness.
Openness, absolutely. Awesome. Y'all are right on the ball today. So the Harvard Business Review has 6 signature traits of an inclusive leader. And I really, I love these traits because I think it's something that any leader should have, but specifically an inclusive leader. And I think for someone to really lead and be able to ensure that everyone is being heard in their organization or, workplace, these are some important things. So we have visible commitment, we have humility, awareness of bias, curiosity about others. We also have cultural intelligence, and then effective collaboration. So visible commitment, what does that mean? It means that you're going to hold others accountable. So what does that look like? So let me give an example. And it's been some years since I've been in student organizations. So I'm going to use some of my experiences in my professional life, but I'll definitely tie it back to the student organization area. So holding others accountable would mean, like, let's say person A comes into work late and so does person B. And the company has a policy that, you need to be on time for work. Well, let's say, person A, I never say anything to them. I just let them come in. But then person B, I'm like, hey, you're late again. I'm going to have to write you up. That's not really being someone who's an inclusive leader, right? I'm not holding everyone accountable to the same level. So holding others accountable is super important. Another example of holding someone accountable is if your organization says we're going to be inclusive, we're going to be committed to diversity and equity, but I hear someone use a microaggression, or I hear someone, or observe them treating someone unfairly, and I don't say anything, but I'm an inclusive leader, I'm not holding others accountable. I'm not living by my commitment to inclusion. The other thing with visible commitment of a leader is proposing new ideas, right? So a lot of times, we feel like we have to go with the status quo, but an inclusive leader says, you know what, just because we've done things this way doesn't mean we have to continue to do that. Let's explore some new ways. Maybe we're working with students of a new population. So let's explore how we can be more accommodating to, our student population. And then also consider what change may look like. Sometimes change is good, but sometimes change is not always meant to happen at that time, right? So you have to kind of evaluate when this change will be best to happen, should the change happen. Those are all things in terms of an inclusive leader having visible commitment, because people are watching. So your membership as leaders, they're watching you all. They're looking at, are they considering how we feel? Are they living by what they're preaching? Those are things that people want to see in an inclusive leader. And again, actions, do they reflect your words? Do your actions reflect your words? Humility. So this is one of my favorites because I think sometimes we all can sometimes maybe lack humility. It's a good reminder that being an inclusive leader, you have to realize that people need to see that you can be an humble individual. And one of the ways is your ability to admit mistakes. So I would consider myself a perfectionist. I'm very much a person who likes to execute. Sometimes I drop the ball on stuff. Sometimes, there actually, when we were first doing this virtual event, I thought I sent the panelists the correct link, but I actually sent them the attendee link. So they were all trying to get on as panelists and it wasn't working. And so I had to admit that I made a mistake. And I think as your peers and organizations, when you make a mistake, it's okay. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. That's the human in us. And then I think the other great thing about being an inclusive leader and with humility is acknowledging that you're not always the expert, right? So that's why we have teams, because no two people have the exact same skill set. So each person can add or contribute something different to a team. And so I think a great leader is one who has experts in different areas, because when that leader is not around or that leader has to, be out for whatever reason, if you have a team of people who have different expertises, then that brings value to the team, and it makes you a great leader because you understand that you don't have to be the end all be all. Like, there are other people that can do their jobs amazing, and it in the long run, it makes you look good as a leader because you're not insecure about surrounding yourself with people who have some expertise in different areas. And then the last part about a leader being humble is empowering others. Again, supporting people when they have new ideas or projects that they want to do within your student group. So letting them know, like, hey, I don't necessarily have to be the one to organize this event. You can organize it. I'll support you and I'll, provide whatever assistance you need, but you can do this. You can be the organizer for this event. That is an inclusive leader, one who, again, doesn't have to be in the limelight, but can empower others to step up and to really support them in their endeavors. And then awareness of bias. So this is one of the ones that I like as well. So it's important to know as an individual, period, but especially as a leader, what your biases are. So Harvard has this implicit bias assessment, and I really encourage you all, and I can send the link to Alex after this, but our leadership team at the college did this probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And the particular assessment will measure your beliefs and opinions, and it had like age, race, ethnicity, weight of people to see what your biases were. And I'll be honest, I was really shocked by some. Like, no, I don't have that bias. But it's important to know. And here's the thing, we all have biases, right? So it's just critical that you know what your biases are, so that when you encounter certain situations, if you have to remove yourself from the situation because you know you have a bias towards that particular project or that particular group of people, you're aware of that. And so part of understanding your bias is that we've all had different experiences and perspectives, kind of what I mentioned before, right? So our experiences shape our perspectives. And if one person grew up this way and that's what they were taught to believe, but another person grew up this way and that was what they're taught to believe, we're going to have those biases. And so I think, again, it's important to recognize that. And that takes a little bit of exploring. It's not something that, happens overnight. You have to be very intentional about it. So again, Harvard's implicit bias is really a great tool to use. So I definitely encourage you all to check that out. The other thing is curiosity about others. That's another good trait of an inclusive leader. And so being open-minded, and I think you all mentioned that in the chat. A lot of times, we maybe want to do things our way, or, again, if something has always worked, we don't want to change it, but we have to be open-minded. We have to consider, again, other people's perspectives, opinions. We have to be willing to hear new ideas and be willing to implement those new ideas. Empathetic. This is something that I think every leader should have, right? So even if you don't, you've never been in that person's shoes, you're not experienced what they're experiencing, but to understand and to say, you know what, I can give you some leeway, or I can, I'm willing to learn, why do you feel this way? Being empathetic. And asking questions, right? So when you meet someone that's different from you, it's okay to ask questions. Like, don't be offensive about it, but let's ask questions. Ask them where they grew up, ask them what their, family is like, ask them, what type of foods they eat. What's your favorite show? What did you watch growing up? What are some of the games you played growing up? What do you like to do for fun? Those are all simple ways to ask someone about themselves and learn about who they are. And then also seek to understand. Again, even if you don't necessarily agree with what someone's saying or with how they believe, just be open to learning more and understanding, maybe what they're coming from, or why they would say something that they said. And then cultural intelligence. So this is a big one. And I think when I think of my job as a whole, like this is my goal for all students, is to develop that cultural intelligence, because you're going to need it no matter where you are in life. You have to be sensitive to other people's cultures. So one of the things, that we do throughout the year is we do cultural months, and we do activities during their months. So if you've never attended any of those, I definitely encourage you to check out an event. This month is Black History Month, so we have a lot of, different events going on. We'll be talking about the Black family and the Black culture. So that's something, if you've maybe never explored, it might be a good opportunity or a starting step to learning about other cultures. And again, cultural intelligence, ask questions. And so one of the other things to consider as a leader in developing cultural intelligence is being aware of the cultural norms in the workplace or at the college, where Kingwood is pretty diverse campus in the system. And so knowing your student body, knowing, the cultures of the student population, that's all important. So when you all have meetings, and you're meeting for the first time, have everyone, if you haven't already done it, go around and ask people, what is something from your culture that you want others to know or that you want to share? That's a good starting point. And then you also, as you operate in cultural intelligence, you need to have motivational, you need to be cognitive. So what does motivational mean? It means that you are being intentional. Again, like if you see someone, a random person that looks different from you, go up and say hi and start a conversation. And cognitive means you're, again, being intentional and thinking about what you're doing as you interact with others, right? So making sure, that you're not saying things that you shouldn't be saying. And then behavioral. how do you act around people who may be different from you, right? So it's okay to be different and act different, but again, understanding those biases and making sure that we're not being offensive to others. And so I think there is a slide missing, but we missed collaboration. So I just want to talk about collaboration. Again, that's, working with people that you've never worked with before. So whether they believe different from you, maybe they're of a different age or a different, generation or a different socioeconomic status. That should be something that you do when you're being collaborative, working with new people. So two clubs who may have a very different purpose, they could work together to try to learn about each other and learn more about, what the organization is and the purpose, and see how they can partner. And so when we talk about inclusive leadership and what does it look like, or how can clubs, practice it, I want to kind of highlight some things and also give you all some more information about how I think you can implement that. So one, understanding your own biases. We talked about that. And so I think one of the great things about clubs and organizations is that I like to think that they are safe places for students to have discussions. And so even if your club's not, a diversity club, or maybe y'all don't usually talk about diversity or inclusion, have those conversations at your club meetings. That's a great way to get to know different people and really allow people to have that space to talk about, maybe how they feel on campus, when they interact with their peers. Also learn about microaggressions. Again, everyone's guilty of using a microaggression, and some of you may have, sat in on a workshop that we've done on microaggressions, but just to give you, I guess, a little what a microaggression is, it's like those everyday, subtle, it can be verbal or nonverbal, but they're things that, that we say that we don't necessarily intend to be offensive, but they are. So let's say that you meet someone of a different color, or in your mind, you don't think they were born here in America, and you say, like, where are you from? That's a microaggression. That has some racially charged connotation to it. And so those are things that you don't want to say. Now, you could say, so, where did you grow up? Like, that would be an okay question to ask, because you're not making any assumptions. You're just asking them. They could have grown up in California. They could have grown up in Germany. They could have grown up anywhere, but you're just saying, hey, I want to get to know you. So you have to be intentional when you're asking and getting to know people. And then you as leaders, like when you all make decisions about what the club is going to do, get your general membership, get their way in. You want to make them feel like they're important. And yes, you as leaders, you have to make the ultimate decision, but your membership needs to know that you want to know how they feel, you understand how they feel, and that you're going to make decisions on what's best for the group as a whole. We talked about admitting mistakes. Intentionally recruit diverse membership. So when you have, I know right now, we didn't do it this year on campus anyway, but Club Rush, like, that's the perfect time, again, to have those conversations with people who may be different, or who, may not usually be attracted to your club. Try to start a conversation and get them to join, or at least attend a meeting. And then have an open mindset when members express their thoughts or opinions. Again, when you have discussions, letting them know that, although you may not agree, you hear them, you're going to think about it, and you all are going to make a decision, again, based on what's best for the organization as a whole. I think one of the most humbling experiences as a leader is allowing people to give you feedback on your leadership style. It can be hard, and it's not always fun, but I think any good leader should be willing to hear what people think about their leadership style. And it may be, there's no right or wrong, and it's just someone's opinion. But I think if you are truly wanting to be an inclusive leader, and you want people to feel like you're their advocate and you're a champion for them, you have to leave room for that constructive criticism. You also have to demonstrate, again, a willingness to learn about different cultures. We talked about that, interacting with people who are different from you. And then one of the things that I think this is so, so important, right? Your leadership should reflect your student population, right? So, and that's with anything in the workplace and, our systems. It should reflect the population of people, right? Because what happens is when you have people who feel like they're not represented, they feel like their voice isn't being heard. And not that that one particular person, represents that, population, but to feel like, okay, there's someone there who can give input, who might be able to give context, that's important. And the other thing is be informed, read and watch the news. I know a lot of people say, hey, I don't want to watch the news, it's just bad stuff, but this is how you know what's going on. This is how you know who's making decisions. This is how you know how different people are affected. So I encourage you, even if it's, once to twice a week, read the news, watch the news, whether it's national news or your local news, know what's going on in your community, because those issues are affecting people, and especially at the college level, you want to know that, and it's going to prepare you for the road. I promise you, when you leave to go on to your next job, you're going to need to know what's going on. Again, consider current events and what's happening in the world and how they impact your peers. I know this summer there were a lot of events. I mean, George Floyd, I think it sparked a conversation, that needed to happen at a lot of different organizations. And I think the sad thing is that it took something like that to really talk about the injustices that are happening in our world. And so as organizations, we don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. So if we can have these conversations to hopefully prevent some of these things to happen, that's what we want to do. So I say that to say, you may have peers this summer that, experience some heartbreak, or they experience something that's been traumatic to them. Allow room in your organization, again, even if that's not your organization's club or mission, to know that their leaders and their other members, want to hear about what's going on in their life and how it's impacted them, so that you all can be there as a support system. That's super, super important. So provide that space within your club and organization. And also understand equity versus equality. So I think this is super important. So equality, let me give you an example. Equality would be two people going to the exact same school, having, taking the exact same classes, having the exact same academic course or courses, having the same books, right? They're going to the same school, having the same teachers, having the same books. That's equality. Equity is understanding that these two people may come from different backgrounds, right? So one may be of a higher socioeconomic status than the other, which means it could look a little different for people, right? So someone may have, Wi-Fi at home. They may have, parents who have advanced degrees, while another person comes from the lower socioeconomic status. They may not have access to internet at home. They may not have a good family support. You never know. And so equity is understanding that sometimes people require different needs, and it's providing those needs and those resources in order to ensure that they have the same chance at success as someone who may have had all these things or has all these things. That's equity versus equality. And that's super important to remember as you are leading organizations and you go on in the workplace, to understand that the systems aren't always fair. And we have a duty as individuals to create equity. And again, when we have teams and members, ensuring that everyone feels like their needs are being met and that their voices are being heard, and that as a leader, you're going to implement those things to make sure that their path of success is just the same as anyone else in the organization. So I know that was a lot, but I hope that that has given you some more insight into what an inclusive leader looks like. And it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. These are, I don't even know if some of the most amazing leaders have all of these 6 traits, but this would be what you should aim for if you want to be an inclusive leader. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm going to monitor the chat for you and see
Okay,
if we get
awesome.
any. So if anybody has any questions about inclusive leadership, any of the information that we talked about, how you can use it in your life, if you want some more examples, anything like that.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, I will definitely, share the PowerPoint with Alex, and then she can send it out to you all if you need it. I'll also share the link to the Harvard implicit bias test. Again, it's a great assessment for you all to go and check out and just figure out what your biases are. It's super important.
I put it in the chat for you too, Kristen, the test.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yep, and
Thank you so
everybody
much.
that is participating today, I'll be sending out a link for our post survey, as well as when this is finished uploading onto our YouTube, a link for the recording as well, so you can go back and see that. And I'll put the link again for the implicit bias test as well. So if you guys don't have any questions, thank you again, Kristen, for presenting today. I think it was very helpful in getting just a little glimpse on how to be a more inclusive leader. And thank you to our two interpreters and to Leah, who's doing our multimedia writing right now. And I hope you guys have a great day. Look out for more of our workshops.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.